24 hours, there were major reports of U.S. strikes on Iran and then Iran retaliating back. And so I'll just pull up what the Cradle said about this. So the IRGC said today that they targeted a communications tower in Sirte early, that the U.S. forces targeted communication towers in Iran's Hormozgan province yesterday. In response, they struck an airbase from which the attack was launched, claiming that its designated targets were destroyed. And they said that any repeat of this U.S. aggression will be met with a completely different kind of response, one that would be the responsibility of the aggressor and the child-killing U.S. regime. Now, of note, Patrick, with these strikes, we saw Kuwait activate their air defenses just hours ago. And this would be the second time that this occurred, because now we have more evidence that on May 27th, the so-called interception, and the U.S. CENTCOM is saying that everything has been intercepted today as well. But on May 27th, they said the single missile was intercepted in that retaliation strike, but it appears that that interception actually caused quite a lot of damage. 5 Americans were injured. I'm hearing also several contractors at the U.S. Al-Asalam base in in Kuwait were also injured, and a $30 million U.S. Reaper drone was destroyed. An MQ-1 drone was also destroyed by Iran. And now we're in a situation where the war could very well restart. There's talks that this expansion of the war against Lebanon, this invasion that Israel is putting together, will and could cause Iran to strike back at Israel too. So, Patrick, what's your reaction to this? It does feel like Israel is right now heavily in the mix of helping to reignite the flame of this conflict. Trump is kind of sitting back and being very mum with his words, surprisingly so. What's your thoughts on what's going on?
Well, there are two parts to that. The first part you mentioned, the radar station at Sirak Island in the Strait of Hormuz. That looks like the United States is preparing to, that could be a missile defense radar battery, air defense. So that looks like that would be the first steps in the United States preparing a major military incursion. They could just be feeling out and poking to try to see how Iran will react, and maybe just gradually, one by one, degrading what they think are key military installations that Iran has to defend the strait. So that's one thing. Whether the U.S. will go through with that or put boots on the ground, or try to occupy an island, one of the islands in there, Goruk Island, or all these various key positions there that one could occupy in order to create a scene, a situation whereby it would create an international incident, and the U.S. could claim that they're taking decisive action, then use that to escalate. We don't know. We don't know what the end result or the end state would be in that. But the U.S. is definitely in the process of interventions, a series of interventions, tactical interventions. That's clear. So this could mean that's a prelude to a resumption in hostilities, possibly. So it's hard to tell. I think the United States clearly has to buy time. They need more time to amass the type of munitions that are going to be required in any kind of serious exchange. But I think that it's controlled escalation right now, and Iran's prepared, of course, as they have been from the beginning, that they prepared for a massive onslaught by the United States and Israel. So what shape that's going to take, I don't know. But the Lebanese question, that's separate. And what I'll say about that, Danny, is that by anchoring negotiations to what's going on in Lebanon, that's something Iran's doing. They're insisting. They've been doing this for now since almost the beginning of this phase of the conflict for the last couple of months, and they're expanding their influence. That's what they're doing, and that's the U.S. and Israel have ignored that. They've ignored that, but the longer Iran sticks to that strategy, and the longer there's no settlement or agreement or deal or whatever you want to call it, that bodes in Iran's favor, because that means, like they did with the GCC, Persian Gulf Arab states, where they pulled them into the conflict and thus pulled the global economy into the conflict. They expanded their influence that way and put pressure on international actors to try to do something to restrain the U.S. and Israel and take Iran seriously as an actor. That's what they're doing here with Lebanon. And so that's, if they don't waver on that, eventually they're going to pull in concerned European governments and other regional governments are saying, wait a minute, Israel, why don't you stop bombing Lebanon?